For you that don't know me, thank you for joining us. My name is Lou Banks and I am the founder of Rising Vibe and Calling Out the Men. And the webinar today is about is culture killing your business? So before we get into it, I wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why we wanted to talk about this subject in this quite dramatic way. We do like to be a bit dramatic at Rising Vibe. Those of you that know us will know this. So well-being, emotional health, mental illness, we all know that right now that is out there. It's been out there for a while now. It's become much more on the radar for the last few years, and I guess has ramped up a bit in the last couple of years especially. And now diversity and inclusion, belonging is being introduced as a big part of that. And we are passionate about all of that stuff. And the focus, I guess, what we've experienced with the clients we're working with on a spectrum of people who are organizations that are really massively investing in it and applying what we would call the attention density approach. So expose new ways of thinking, new frames, new lenses, new information, and then repeat, apply, so that it embeds and consolidates. That's going on for sure with some of the clients we work with on one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum, and I think there's more this end, and this isn't a criticism at all, I think it's just a kind of point in time for a lot of people. There's also some tick boxing going on. So people doing things in that arena because they know it's important, but it's probably not having as much impact as it could have. So we're seeing that happen on a spectrum. So Jeanette's I'm going to actually do the kind of rules of engagement in a minute, Jeanette, as well. So I'll make sure that I mention that before I move on to the next slide. So the rise of awareness is great, and it's still a big issue. And with all the clients we're working with, the organizations we're working with, people not feeling great is still a big issue. And in our experience, based on our research and the work that we are doing, social pain is at the root of that. So what I'm going to do today is take you through what we mean by social pain, the impact of it, how it's killing business in our opinion, and what we mean by social pain-free culture. I also want to mention mental health first aid, because I talked about that in the intro to this actually. So if you're in the UK, you'll be very familiar with it. If you're not in the UK, because I know there's quite a lot of people signed up that are not from the UK, mental health first aid is a fantastic initiative where there are now a lot of mental health first aiders in organisations who are there to specifically, explicitly support mental health in organisations. And it's a fantastic initiative. And in our experience, to bring more to it, to layer some stuff on top of it, is going to really help this social pain issue. And I'll explain to you as we go through why that is from our perspective. So the work we do absolutely supports the mental health first aid stuff, and we think can take it to a slightly deeper level as well. So that is why I talked about the mental health first aid, because it's a big initiative in the UK. So just a few rules. Let me check my notes here. So we are recording this, so you will get the recording even if you're on here now. You can clearly delete it if you don't want it. What we're also going to do is there is a Q&A option on here, and there is a chat option. So Jeanette, who is my wing woman today, she is on mute as my other panelist, and she is going to capture the themes of anything on chat and anything on Q&A. So there's a Q&A option if you just want to ask the question directly, but the chat is so everybody can see. If you click on to all panelists and attendees, everybody will see your comments. And I personally like that to happen. I like to see what everyone else is talking about and sharing, because that's part of social support, opposite to social pain thing, actually. So please capture your thoughts on the chat, any Q&A, and at the end, Jeanette will come off mute and she will share some of the themes of the questions that came through so we can answer some on this webinar. Any we don't get to, we're going to pull together a Q&A, frequently asked questions kind of sheet, and we will also send that to you. So please comment questions, challenge, disagreements, resonating, agreements. We love all that. So please chuck it into chat or ask us a question. Right, I think they're the rules. I think I've covered them all. So let me go on to my first slide. So let me just give you a little bit of background into Rising Vibe and, oh, I've done here, let me minimize that, that's it. To Rising Vibe and Calling Out the Men. So Rising Vibe is a culture consultancy. We are culture consultants. and calling out the men is our sub-brand. And calling out the men is specifically to support men in business emotionally. So the calling out the men strapline is providing emotional support for men in business, because there is nothing out there to support men with emotions in business right now. If you Google support for women in business, huge long list. If you Google support for men in business, what comes up is how they should support women. So we're very passionate about that. So that's what calling out the men is. It's a sub-brand, but it fits beautifully into Rising Vibe, which is about culture and culture change, embedding culture. And we use emotions to drive cultural change, which I'm going to talk to you a lot about today. And of course, which will link massively into why social pain and social pain free is so important to us. So what is a culture consultant? Very high level. What we do is we help our clients take the culture they have. And when I say the culture they have, I mean, what do they have written down? Some values, some principles, a way of, some behaviors. And we help them bring them to life in terms of what does that mean for somebody working here? If they want to represent that value or principle within the culture, what is it that you expect them to do? How do you want them to behave? How they're supposed to be? So we can either define or refine the culture with our clients. And then what we do is we help to recognize where they're starting from. So in context of that, where are you starting from? What is the current culture? And then what we do is design the learning solution to move you from the start point to the desired point. Really straightforward. But we use emotion to underpin that. And why is that? Well, in my personal experience, in the experience of the team members at Rising Vibe, and with every single client and delegate I've ever worked with, emotions will enable or disable. Emotions will help or not help. Emotions get in the way all the time because we are emotional beings. Even the most rational, logical of us feel. Some of us like to deny that we feel, but we all feel. And when we feel good, we perform well, we show up good. When we don't feel good, we don't perform as well as we could, and that will impact performance 100%. It impacts everything we do. How we're feeling impacts everything we do. So if we're trying to deliver an initiative in an organization, or at home, by the way, to support people to engage in what it is that we're trying to do, if they're not feeling good about what it is we're trying to do, they will not engage. They can tell you they're engaging, but they won't be. And there's lots of people who pretend they're engaging, but aren't, so you don't get the results. There's a lot of people, and I was one of them, by the way, who was pretending I was fine when I wasn't fine at all. So we like to call those functioning fakeaholics. So what we recognize is, without labeling and being very blatant and open about emotion, people will get stuck. People can become stuck. Feel good, feel better, do better, feel good, perform better. Don't feel so good, don't perform as well as you can. So that is why we use emotion. I'm going to talk to you a lot more about that as we go through. And in terms of culture, the first bullet is, one of the many descriptions out there, which are very similar about how do you describe culture. So the way of life of groups of people, meaning the way they do things. The next bullet is an interesting one for me. And I put that in because people are the culture, which is obvious, right? But we hear a lot of people talking about the culture like it's completely separate to them. So yeah, it's a toxic culture. The culture isn't changing. We need to change the culture. They need to change the culture. You are the culture. We are all the culture. If we are in an organization, we are part of that culture. We make up that culture. Talking about it as a separate entity to us is unhelpful straight from the start. And that is what we hear a lot of people do. And how we address any cultural learning, cultural change is by impacting the individual at the individual level, which will impact the collective results and collective performance. We use a coaching approach all the time, facilitated learning and coaching approach. So the work that we do, especially because we're talking about emotion, will land on the individual. So the individual has the opportunity, the choice. You can't make anyone do anything. Would be much easier if we could. But by delivering a solution that impacts you at an individual level, gets you thinking at an individual level, the chances of that individual making some shifts is far greater, which means the collective change, the collective results can be much greater. So that was really important for us to put in. We are the culture. I am part of the culture at Rising Vibe. You are part of the culture wherever you're working. It's not separate to you. And that means we can't blame anybody, right? Which sometimes is easier to blame. And we work with the individual to impact the collective. The other thing that was really important that we talk about in our Rising Vibe language way is culture for us is what is expected. So is it clear what it means to live and breathe? We hear live and breathe talked a lot. Is it clear what to live and breathe the culture means around here? So that's expected. And even if that is explicitly clear, which is rare, by the way, explicitly clear, and it would be rare because we'll interpret language slightly differently, but even if we laid it out as clearly as we could, if something different is accepted, it's a complete waste of time. And that is the biggest challenge we find with our clients, that there could be a fantastic, very clear, this is what the culture is, this is how we expect people to show up and behave and the things that we do together. But when things happen that don't conform to that, nobody is holding people to account, or everyone defers to the leaders to hold people to account. And what stops us holding people to account is a sense of fear, is social pain, actually, which I'm going to talk about. So unless we can get underneath how we feel about doing or not doing something, we are never truly going to be able to help the individual and therefore the collective organization make any change. Okay. So how do we do that? This is a very high level, how do we do that? So how do we tackle the individual? Not literally tackle the individual, but how do we tackle the individual learning and the individual resistance? So mindset and emotion. Now, mindset is, people that know me well will know I have a bit of a reaction to certain buzzwords that organizations use. I am a simple soul. I like things to be straightforward, and I like to know what people mean, and I like to do my best to say what I mean. And I think there's a lot of corporate jargon that doesn't really help us in that way. And mindset actually is one of them. So I hear a lot of people, not just in business, by the way, in life, talking about mindset in a very black and white kind of way. Well, Lou, it's because you've got a fixed mindset. Well, Lou, you just need to change your mindset. I mean, that has been said to me before, clearly. Now, just changing your mindset sounds very simple. It is not. That doesn't mean it isn't possible. It's absolutely possible, and we see it happening. I've done it with myself, but it takes focus. It takes focusing long enough, hard enough, and often enough to do it. So it doesn't happen overnight. And mindset is bandied around all over the place. The way that we describe mindset at Rising Vibe is your thought pattern at any given moment. Your thought pattern at any given moment. So not fixed, not growth, not open, not closed, not negative, not positive, just your thought pattern at any given time. We have patterns of thinking, but it's never just one way. And I think that schools are really unhelpful with this. You know, my daughter came home from school, she just got to senior school, and said, I've been told I've got a growth mindset, mum. And I said, well, that's good, and often you do, and sometimes you don't. Because labeling mindset as one thing in one given moment is just not helpful. We have 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of them are on repeat. 95% are on repeat, which is why it does feel like it could be fixed or growth or. But patterns, so we have 95% of thought patterns. Now, if I was to ask all of you to tell me what mindset you've got right now in this moment, you would probably all, and it would be great, some of you might want to stick this in the chat, you might say curious, bored, heard it all before, indifferent, excited, passionate, who knows, but you probably give me one word or maybe a statement. What we do is help people think about how they are feeling about something, and then access the thoughts they are having that are driving that feeling, which is a much simpler, it sounds more long-winded actually, but it's a much simpler way to really identify your thought pattern in that moment. So if you were to ask me what my mindset was right now, I could probably pull something out the bag because I'm talking about it all the time. If you were to ask me how I feel right now, how I'm feeling is passionate, which is why I have to be mindful of my speed, because I know I get very fast when I'm passionate. I'm feeling a little bit of irritation because I've got a little bit of a concern that the noise might start. Those of you who weren't on before, there's a dog barking, and the children next door, because my office is at the bottom of my garden, are making a lot of noise. So I've got a little bit of irritation going on. And the thoughts driving the irritation are, the children might start making a noise in a minute. And that means if they start making a noise, people on the webinar will hear it. And that means, which actually takes me to feel unsure and a bit worried, that it won't sound as good as it could, which might impact our credibility. What will people think about the brand? There's children and dogs in the background. And I'm actually only working that out as I recognise I felt a bit worried, which I thought originally was irritation. My passion, I'm telling myself, this stuff is so important. We know this stuff works. We know about this stuff. So I could do loads and loads and loads of helpful thoughts, which are driving my feelings of passion. So that's how we do it. We access mindset via emotion first. And the rising vibrational scale is our diagnostic and measurement tool that I'm going to show you at the end. And we use that to help people to do that. So I'll show you that in a minute. So unhelpful thinking rules supreme. So we are hardwired on a ratio of 5 to 1 to scan for danger. So the reptilian brain is still hugely in force. It is the most powerful brain. It trumps the power of the emotional and the rational brain. So it's always looking for threat. It's looking to keep us in self-preservation and survival. So that means we're always scanning for danger, which means most of the thinking that we have will be unhelpful rather than helpful, will be self-preserving. We are more likely to go to a negative, catastrophic place when something happens to us in the outer world that doesn't feel great than we are to go to a place of what a great opportunity for learning. I've trained myself to go there quite quickly afterwards because I'm a brilliant catastrophic fantasizer. We all are, but I was particularly good at it. I'm still pretty good at it, but I have practiced and practiced, expose, repeat, apply, so that now when I go there, I change to, okay, you can't change it, so what can you learn? What will you do differently next time? But unhelpful thinking rules supreme. Our thoughts, what we're thinking, expose our beliefs and therefore our resistance to something. So what we believe to be true about it, therefore is there some resistance, and our thoughts will tell us that. And what we have recognized with all the research and all the people we're working with right now is that social pain or social threat, which I'm going to talk to you about, is driving our unhelpful thinking. Unless we can get under this and support each other and support our workforce, which the workforce is the culture, to learn how to manage that social pain and social threat more effectively, in our opinion, the stat around depression being predicted to be the biggest health problem in the world by 2030 will probably be true. So all of the support that's happening right now, all of the focus is really helping, but no one is really talking about this stuff with the frame of social pain, which we think is a gap. So social pain is driving our unhelpful thinking. Let's talk about what social pain is. So social pain is all these things: judgment, conflict with someone else, lacking influence, feelings of isolation, rejection, exclusion, not feeling heard, loss. And all of us will experience these on a spectrum, some, mild intensity, some really intense on a regular daily basis, because we are hardwired for connection. And there's a psychologist in the States, Matthew Lieberman, and he really challenges, you might have seen it on social media this week, he really challenges Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he puts social needs right at the base as the most important thing. And there have been many, many, many experiments over the years that prove this point. And one of them is a very old one. Some of you may have heard of this experiment. I mean, it's a horrific experiment. I'm sure people would not do it today because it was with monkeys. But in the 1950s, a man called Harry Harlow, he did an experiment where he took baby monkeys away from their mother the moment they were born. He put some baby monkeys into a metal box in pure isolation, so no connection from the minute they were born. So actually, these baby monkeys knew nothing different. They were straight into a metal box with food and water. So, basic survival, shelter, food and water, but no connection. Some of the other baby monkeys were put into a big cage. And in the cage, in one corner, was food and drink and toys and things they could climb on. And in the other corner of the cage was a big wire model of a monkey, of a grown monkey, covered in fur. And what they found was the monkey that had been in a metal box starved itself to death. Just starved itself to death. Didn't eat. Even though it had food and drink in abundance, didn't eat. Starved itself to death. The monkeys in the big cage, they would go to the corner for eating and drinking, and then they would hang off the wire monkey covered in fur. They needed the connection. all of us have heard stories, you know, and we're not monkeys. We're not monkeys. I was going to try and make a joke then, but I'm not going to. In terms of, you know, we have evolved from that, and their need for connection is the same as ours. And we know that we all feel the same thing when we are isolated. Solitary confinement is a punishment in prison. I mean, I don't know if they still do that in prison, but that's the ultimate punishment, taking people away from people. When you're not invited to something, you know, we will all have our psychological needs. If you have a need for inclusion, you'll probably feel it a bit more. But when we're not invited to something that we think maybe we should, or other people we know are invited to, we'll feel a sense of exclusion. It doesn't feel great. So the Harry Harlow example is one. There was an experiment actually that proved that social pain and physical pain are experienced in exactly the same way. So the anterior cingulate in the brain lights up when we are in physical pain. It also lights up when we are in social pain. So when we are experiencing any of these, we don't feel heard, we don't feel like we have influence, judged, disconnected, rejected, lost, the same part of the brain will light up. The exact same part of the brain will light up. So we might not be monkeys, but we feel the same as those baby monkeys did back in that horrific experiment. When we have not connected, we will feel pain. And anyone who's had any chronic physical pain in their life, even if you've had a twisted ankle for a couple of days and every time you walk on it, it hurts, it's really exhausting. So imagine the fact that some people, certainly it's a fact that some people we are working with in terms of the organizations with our clients, some people are in chronic social pain and have been for quite a long period of time. One of the experiments they did to prove the point that the anterior cingulate lights up was a game called Cyberball. And what they did, they took volunteers and they obviously they measured the brain activity. And I hadn't even met, so if I was in this Cyberball game, I hadn't actually met anybody else in the game with me because it was digital, all online. And what we were doing, we were playing catch, cyber catch, basically, digital online catch. And the people running the experiment would start to cut people out of the game. Without telling them, they would just cut them out of the game. So all of a sudden in the game, you would not receive the ball. You could see it, you didn't know you'd been taken out of the game, you were still in the game, but you weren't actually having the ball thrown to you. The anterior cingulate started to light up by being rejected by people you'd not met and couldn't even see. That is how powerful this stuff is. So let's think about that, the intensity of the light, the anterior cingulate lighting up, and for how long that light stays on will absolutely depend on who the social pain is being experienced with, unless it's social threat, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. So if there's someone I'm working with who I believe has a significant impact on my results, on my career, on my reputation, if I feel any sense of any of these with them, my anterior cingulate is going to light up long and hard because that person is significant in my circle of influence. So the fact that even during that game of Cyberball, there was a sense of rejection from not having a ball thrown to me, even though I hadn't met the person. Imagine how it is for us when someone significant in our life and our career is not connecting with us in the way that we like. It hurts. And I guess there's also the other story that would really prove the point of social pain is those stories you hear of people who are elderly and have been together, married for 50, 60, 70 years, and one of them passes away. And not long after, the other one passes away, even though the other one hadn't actually been unwell. That really is dying of a broken heart. And I'm sure many of you here on the webinar or listening to the recording can recall the heartbreak diet, when actually you don't want to eat. You just feel so rubbish. So that is what social pain is. It is a sense of any of those things. And I was with a client in a client meeting just this morning, and we were talking about having the conversations that matter, which don't often happen because we are so afraid of the social pain. We are afraid of rejection or disconnection, and that nobody was having those feedback conversations. And as the leader, and a very senior leader, by the way, so the people in his team are also very senior. So this social pain stuff does not care how senior or how junior, how old you are, your length of service, how intelligent you are, how many degrees you've got, whether you went to school or not. Social pain is universal. It doesn't matter. And this guy I was speaking to this morning was saying how uncomfortable he was, that he knew that these guys were having some issues because they were being fed back through HR and they were about him and they weren't talking to him. He was feeling a lot of these things. He was feeling judged. He was feeling some conflict, even though he hadn't even spoken to him about it. He was feeling a loss of the disconnection. And he felt a lot of shame actually around the fact that people weren't coming to him. And that example I've just shared with you is showing up all the time with all of our clients. And that's just the people we're working with. Okay, so let's just get into how significant this social pain stuff really is. So I've talked about how we experience it. The other bit, which is, even more unhelpful for us as human beings, is that we are always evaluating social threat. So we are evaluating the thought of social pain, social threat, before it even happens. So if we're going into a meeting with some key stakeholders and actually, for example, I've struggled for quite a long time to really have any influence with this key stakeholder who I need to support me on this project. Before I even go into the meeting, I'm already anticipating the fact I'm not going to be heard and I won't have any influence. So before I'm even factually, in reality, experiencing not being heard and not influencing, I am evaluating the social threat of that, and I'm already feeling it, and the brain is already lighting up. That is how powerful this stuff is. We are evaluating social threat. Again, this is why, another example, presentations, public speaking is a big deal for people, because the evaluation of social threat, the fear of judgment is so great before you even stepped out onto the stage or even stood up at the front of the room. So not only do we feel it, we also worry about feeling it. We are anticipating it, so we feel it before we even need to feel it. Cortisol is released. Cortisol is released. Too much cortisol, unhelpful. The body, inflammation in the body happens in exactly the same way as it does with physical pain, and the immune system kicks in exactly the same way as it does when we're in physical pain. This is how significant this stuff is. So imagine the chronic pain can lead to disease, dis-ease. It can lead to disease. This is really significant. And if you are already poorly, illness will progress. I've spoken very open about the fact I have adrenal fatigue. I was diagnosed in 2012, which is too much adrenaline. My cortisol levels dip because they can't cope with dealing with that amount of adrenaline, and you just feel exhausted all of the time. So I know that having adrenal fatigue comes from social pain, and so illness will progress. So always getting poorly, always having a cold, even that kind of stuff keeps happening because your immune system is impacted. People who are more prone to an aggressive reaction, so fight, flight, freeze. Some people withdraw, flight, passive. Some people attack. I'm an attacker. So some people who are more prone to being more aggressive rather than passive suffer with anxiety. 2 ticks for me. Introverted. I'm not introverted. I'm not really extroverted, but I'm not introverted. So that's a cross. And high emotionality. And high emotionality is when you feel things intensely. So you have intense feelings of tension and intense feelings of apprehension. Those people will feel more social pain as well. So not only does social pain not feel good, it is not good for us. It is not good for us. I'm just going to do a time check for myself. Okay. So let's just see how all of this is impacting your business, our business. These stats, these headings, everyone will be familiar with these, but based on what I've just shared, it is no wonder that this is happening. So absenteeism, stats from last year, 17.5 million days of absenteeism due to mental health. And that, by the way, are just the people that are being honest about not feeling well, okay? They're just the people being honest about it. Leavism, people taking holidays to catch up or catching up on holiday. People rarely offline these days. And what we've recognized when working with our clients is one of the reasons why people are rarely offline is because they are not connected on, they're rarely offline because they are not feeling connected when they're with people. So great example, someone in our team went to Australia earlier this year to see her sister who had a baby. And she said, just at a meeting, the week before she went, I'm going to be logging on, or I'll check that when I'm in Australia. And I said, why will you be checking that when you're in Australia? You're on holiday with your sister. You don't see that often with a newborn baby. Why would you be logging on? Well, I just wanted to keep up to date. I said, I do not want you working when you're on holiday. We can completely manage without you for 3 weeks. It's really not a problem. Now, she did go offline. And the reason she went offline was because she knew that I meant that. Because we have a very strong connection. She feels safe with me. She knows when I say, I do not want you working, I mean, I do not want you working. So that is missing a lot of the time now. And even if it's just that explicit conversation to say, I do not want you working. Have you heard me? I do not want you working. That is often missing, which means people feel the pain. So the social threat, evaluation of social threat, if I don't keep up, what if something happens when I'm away? What if something goes wrong when I'm away? What if I miss something? Keeps people online when they should be offline. Exit interviews and work-related stress massively linked. So a lot of the exit interview data is when people at last feel safe enough to say what they mean. And you will see a lot of this exact same data in work-related stress research, which is all of it, it goes back to social pain. Whether it is obvious social pain, so I feel bullied, no influence, don't feel heard, work-life balance, lack of role clarity or lack of expectations, clear expectations comes up quite a lot actually in both. Now, just when you hear it said in that way, it doesn't sound like a social pain thing, but if you are not feeling safe enough to say, actually, I'm not sure what you expect of me, or could you give me some more explicit clarity? If you don't feel comfortable enough to say that to your leader, your line manager, or to someone in the business to gain clarity, that means you don't feel safe enough, which is social pain. And 59% of people are experiencing work-related stress around those subjects. And again, these are just the people that are okay admitting that, because we know there's a lot of shame associated still with saying we can't cope. Presenteeism, 86% of people last year reported a rise in the organisation of seeing presenteeism. So that's people coming in when they're not well, because they're too uncomfortable, afraid to take time off, or coming in and not being present in terms of not being engaged, demotivated, anxious, helpless, despairing, resentful, all of those things. We see a lot of presenteeism actually when we're working with people going through a change or a merger or an acquisition. They're in it, they're not engaged in it, they haven't bought into it, they don't feel good about it. So they're present, but they're not in it. So it doesn't feel good. It isn't good for us, and it is absolutely killing our business. Our people are our culture. If the people are feeling like this, then the culture is killing the business. And most of the world population spend 1/3 of their adult life at work, on average 26 years. This isn't 26 years of your life working. This is 26 years actually on the job, doing the job in the business. That is a very, very long time. So imagine if you are spending a significant proportion of that 26 years in social pain. Not good for you, not good for anybody, certainly not good for the business. So these are the common problems that we are solving with our clients at the minute. So these are the 6 areas that come up time and time and time again for us when we are working with our clients. So the words on the left are the words that we would hear our clients, and we work with big corporates to small, medium enterprises. So, you know, big machine corporate organizations to organizations that are new, up to sort of 30 people. The same issues come up because we are humans and we all feel social pain. The words on the left are the kind of words we hear the organization describe as a problem. And then the words on the right are the words that we use to explain the pain that comes from the social pain that people experience. So low resilience, you know, people being expected to do more and more with less, you know, cuts and resource being taken away. I mean, it's a sign of the times, but people are still expected to do what they did, even though they've got less. So people are burnt out and have nothing left in the tank. That is how it feels for people. How can people be working well when they're in that space? They can't. They actually can't. They might be a functioning fakeaholic, as I described at the beginning, but they're not going to be doing their best work for you or the business. Poor communication, used a lot. Very vague, very broad. The way we describe it at Rising Vibe is people not saying what they mean, asking for what they need, or giving feedback. So common. And that, based on the social pain I just showed you, and the fact we're so hardwired for connection, it's not a surprise that people are so afraid of making situations worse, falling out with someone, impacting their career. And the hierarchy added into it is why a lot of people don't feed upwards, because it will impact their career. So it's kind of the double whammy social pain. I don't want to upset you, and actually it might impact my progress. You know, people feel unsafe and isolated when they're not actually communicating by saying what it is that they mean or what they need. Everybody wants to know where they stand, by the way. Even if the news isn't great news, people want to know, and people aren't saying it. It's really unkind. It's really unkind. I've not met anyone yet in my career who would say, I love it when I don't know how people think I'm doing. I love not knowing. And in fact, I really love it when people say things about me behind my back, but not to my face. No one says that. That's why people aren't, but people are still not doing it. Tick boxing, this comes up a lot, where people are miserable and stuck because it feels like budget cuts and sense of urgency mean, yep, we've done it, let's move on. Yep, we've done it, let's move on. It doesn't work. It's not the exposure, repeat, apply that we talk about that underpins our approach. Attention density is absolutely vital if you're going to change anything sustainably. You know, you won't have any sustainable change, certainly no transformational change if you just tick box. And we're working with a lot of people who are really frustrated by that. And they feel miserable and very stuck in the same old place, even though some solution has been thrown in. Political correctness, this is a big one that's come up, probably more recently than the others, around diversity and in performance. There is a fear of getting it wrong, especially now around the Me Too stuff, around the big thing around gender. And going back to calling out the men, there is nothing out there providing emotional support for men. There is so much for women. You know, I have approached a couple of governing bodies and said, we'd love your support on this. And they're not doing it yet because no one's really in a governing body way going out there for the fellas. You know, menopause, yes. I mean, I've been contacted a lot about that recently. I'm not sure quite how to take that. You know, women in burnout, women this, women that. I'm a woman. I totally buy into that. Actually, it's not equal anymore. And there's a lot of men we're working with who just don't know how to deal with performance because of the whole diversity thing anymore. So afraid of the implication. I mean, women too, but it's a big thing for men right now. Resistance to change. So we hear our clients say they're just not changing. They're just not changing. Part of that will be because of the tick boxing. But the change is relentless. The change is relentless now. So people are feeling really resentful. A lot of people we're working with are feeling very resentful. Some fear too, without a doubt, but the resentment is big. And resentment will provide resistance, which means progress won't happen. When you are feeling that level of emotion, which is very low vibe, as we'd call it, you're not going to want to engage and progress and move forward. Excuse me. Silo working comes up a lot, not out, up. Now, silo working will come ultimately, sometimes it can be pace, by the way, and genuinely just not thinking about where else you need to go because there's so much going on in the sense of urgency. That can be true in business for sure. I can be guilty of that. But often it comes from a place of self-preservation, which is, I don't trust you, so I don't want to share. Why would I tell you? Because you might use it against me. I need to protect myself because I want to have some kind of power here. Knowledge is power stuff. So silo working is rarely because people just don't know who to speak to. That can be the case, but it's usually because I do not feel safe. I feel under threat, so I'm not going to share, I'm not going to collaborate. Or it could be, I want to collaborate, but I don't feel like I can influence you and I don't feel heard from by you, so I'm going to withdraw and just keep to myself because I don't get what I need from over there. Leadership disconnection, this comes up a lot. The gap, not in all organizations, we're working with some great organizations at the minute that really closing that gap. Hierarchy will always cause a bit of a challenge for people, I think. It's just the way it works. It's the way we're hardwired, you know, to a point, and the social pain around challenging upwards, as I've already explained, is a bit of an issue for a lot of people. But there is a gap between the leadership, whether it's the exec, the board, the leadership team, whatever you call them, and the wider organization. There's a disconnect. The guys at the top, and when I say at the top, I mean at the top of the business, running the business, often become removed and disconnected from what's really going on. The guys don't talk to them about what's really going on because they don't have that level of connection and rapport and trust. So they go, that would be career limiting, so I'm not going to say anything. So they remain misunderstood and unheard. And actually, so do the leaders a lot of the time because they want to know. Most of them really want to know but don't hear it. So these 6 problems come up all the time in terms of the client work we're doing. When we're working on the culture, how do we help you move the culture forward? What's stopping you? These come up consistently. And as you can see, every single one of them will relate back to some form of social pain. Let's go to time check. Okay. So this is what we call, this is how we would describe the Rising Vibe SPF social pain-free culture. Now, let me be very clear. To be social pain-free is absolute utopia, complete utopia. But we like a little bit of shooting high and far. We are hardwired this way, as I already said. So to completely eliminate social pain is pretty impossible. But to aim for that means we will start to alleviate some of it for sure. So when you start to create a social pain-free culture, it feels safe. It feels safe. People feel able to turn up at work and be themselves. And I don't mean be themselves and be in a foul mood and start abusing people. I don't mean that. We have to challenge behavior that's not helpful. But what I mean is I feel able to say, I'm having a bad day. I feel able to say, I don't feel heard. I feel able to say, I'm struggling really to connect with this piece of work, this project, this change, this new leader. Social support, and I've put mental health first aid in brackets here. Social support is the antidote, one of the antidotes to social pain. Social support means we have a network of people around us who we feel supported and safe with. And it is powerful when it happens. And the mental health first aid stuff provides that, which is why I think it's been fantastic. It provides you somewhere to go, someone to speak to. The challenge with it is that potentially the person that is a mental health first aider isn't the person that you are really experiencing the social pain with. If I'm having an issue with my boss and I've got a peer or someone in my team that's a mental health first aider, I could chat to them about it, absolutely. But the person I really need to address it with is my boss. So the mental health first aid, really powerful in terms of social support, but there's still not enough of it. I've got one great example with a client who was in a meeting, and the chief exec was in the meeting, some of her senior team, and some of the senior team's direct reports, and some of the kind of operational people. And there was an incident when someone challenged something to do with the operation, was really brave and challenged it, and the chief exec didn't receive it well and was very forceful with the response and kind of shut the whole conversation down. Now, this person from the operational level had been brave enough to bring this and had not only their line manager and the line manager's line manager and their line manager's line manager and the chief exec in the room. No one backed her up. Everybody was uncomfortable with that interaction. Nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. So not only did she attempt to be brave enough to address it, she was shut down, ultimate social pain from that shutdown, not being heard, but also, and rejected, dismissed, maybe a sense of loss, certainly disconnected, but actually then the shame layered on top of happening in front of everybody else, and no one backing her up. I've seen that, by the way, happen many times. All it would have taken was one person to say, I just want to share, I was quite uncomfortable with that interaction. I appreciated the challenge. I didn't appreciate the response. Now, when we've had the conversation since, people have said, there is no way I'd ever do that. There is no way I would ever do that. Career limiting, it would make it difficult for me. My card would be marked. How often do you hear that? And even, by the way, even if you don't hear it, even if you've got the most fantastic culture, and there are loads of them out there, by the way, loads of them, this might still happen because we're human. And, you know, we all have bad days and we all have, you know, low vibe, not feel good emotions. So social pain-free culture is safe. I can be me. People, if I can be me, I'm going to be more honest and more real. I really have a reaction to the word authentic. It's just about being real for me. Be you, be real. When people are more honest and real, there is more connection and trust. When you are not putting up a front, when you haven't got a barrier up, when you're not pretending, when you're being you, people can connect to it. So there'll be more connection and trust. When there is more connection and trust, People will be more innovative and creative. And Deloitte has done loads and loads and loads of research on the power of organizations who do work in this area. They call it in the wellbeing arena. Innovation and creativity goes through the roof, because I haven't got a fear my evaluation of social threat will go down, because there's no such thing as a stupid idea. I won't be rejected. I won't be dismissed. I'll be heard. And even if my idea isn't picked up, I'll be heard and someone will explain to me why it might not work. This, no brainer, but we had to write it. That is going to enable increased performance and productivity at an individual level. So imagine the collective impact in your business, in the culture. That increased performance and productivity will drive improved business results. Fact, no brainer, absolute fact. So the way that we describe all of that in a nutshell is the Rising Vibe SPF culture is where your people have the opportunity to feel better more often. Not feel positive all the time, because that is impossible, but feel better more often. Our strapline is feel better, do better. How can we support people in our lives, by the way, not just at work, but especially at work? We spend so much time there, 26 years actually doing the do, to feel better more often. How do we enable a culture that provides the environment for people to be able to do that? That's what I'm going to show you now before we go on to questions. Some of you would have seen this. Those of you who know us will have seen this. This is the backbone model measurement tool diagnostic of the Rising Vibe brand, the Rising Vibrational Scale. Now, this can be used in a multitude of ways, and we use it in different, we work with global organizations who've got it in different languages. It is not a diagnostic in a scientific way. This is an intuitive tool. Anyone familiar with Abraham Hicks on this call will recognize the levels for certain, the 22 levels. The source of this model comes from the emotional guidance system, Abraham Hicks. But what we did was take it and stay true to the source of the 22 levels, but we made it much more accessible in terms of language for the corporate business world. By the way, some of these words still don't feel particularly comfortable in the corporate business world, but they're much more accessible than the original emotional guidance system, which is a little bit more spiritual, which I love, by the way. So the reason there are 7 what we call high vibe emotions and 15 low is because we're hardwired for scanning for danger, as I've already talked about. So we are more likely to be in a low vibe place than a high vibe place. We do not say at Rising Vibe, good, bad, right, wrong, appropriate, inappropriate, irrelevant, relevant. It is helpful or unhelpful, depending on your outcome. This is so important. And if you took nothing else from this webinar apart from that, please take that. Labeling things as good, bad, right, or wrong immediately elicits social pain. Immediately. I've got it wrong. Judgment straight away. Actually, when it comes to how we're feeling, every single one of these emotions are valid. It just depends on our outcome as to whether they're helping us or not. So an example, if I came onto this webinar feeling helpless and despairing and helpless, it probably wouldn't serve me that well. It probably wouldn't be that helpful for me to deliver a webinar on this subject. I'd probably get through it. I have a history of functioning fakeaholic, remember, but it would be an effort. I'd have to put loads of focus on it, and you certainly wouldn't get the best of me. However, if my dad is not particularly well and has aged a lot, and I'm really sad about that, if I want to allow myself to feel the pain and grieve a bit of that, to allow myself to feel those emotions, feeling helpless and feeling despair is going to really serve me well. On the other side, these words are all seen as positive, and these are encouraged in business. And of course, so they should be. We want to feel this way, but it has to be genuine. It has to be genuine. But if I'm feeling euphoric, elated, and joyous, and I'm going into work with starting a new program, working with some people who've been through a massive restructure and have lost people they used to work with, wanted redundancy, didn't get it. This is a very recent thing for me in terms of a delegate group we've got. If I go in there in a euphoric state, of course I can be flexible with my approach, but that's probably not going to serve me so well either. So there is no right, wrong, good or bad. It is about, is how I'm feeling right now helping me or not helping me? And then to ask yourself the question, if it's not helping me, what thoughts am I having right now that are driving these feelings? And what might be a slightly different perspective? So I've got 2 simple examples, one a metaphoric personal one and one a really good business one. And just to highlight, if you want more information on this scale, we can download the scale as it is now from our website. So go there on the Rising Vibrational Scale page, you can download it. If you want more information, email us at hello@rising-vibe.com. The details will be on the next page. Pick up a call with us, do a Zoom call. How to really use this in loads of depth in your business or personally, just let us know and I can take you through that. The two examples are when my son Charlie, who's just at university now, that is proper social pain for me. Oh my goodness, am I missing him? I won't get into that, it'll drop my vibe. He was doing his first, when he did his GCSEs, he'd never revised before. Charlie would always do as little as he could. But he kind of knuckled down a bit with that. And I remember him saying to me, well, I could feel his anxiety, you know, dining room table trying to do some work, and I could feel his anxiety. And I said to him, what's going on? He said, oh, I can't, I feel rubbish, Mum. I'm scared I'm going to fail. Okay, mate, what's going on? What do you believe is going to happen? What do you believe about revision? And he said, I don't know how to revise. I don't know how to revise. I don't know how to revise. So imagine that as a thought. I don't know how to revise. I don't know how to revise. Your outcome, exams, you want to pass. I don't know how to revise. Not helpful. I could have said to him, mate, of course you can do it. You know how to revise. You can learn it easily. You're a bright lad. All true. And I do believe that, by the way. But that's not going to help him. That is a quantum leap. And in fact, if I'd said that to him, it would have kept him stuck because he would not have believed it. So what I said instead was, you just don't know yet, mate. It's new. You just don't know yet. It's new. Slight baby step shift. Baby step reframe. Reframing doesn't work when we try and quantum leap it. Baby step shift. I could see him physically move and look more hopeful. Really quick. A great business example. I have a coaching client, a CFO who had a meeting with their CEO, and a lot of social pain going on for the CFO. Wanted to give them some feedback. Was in free fall. Rang me the day before. Was going in. Rang me the night before. Was going in the next morning. I'm in absolute state. I'm in absolute anxiety. I'm going to have to call in sick. Okay. Talk to me about what you believe is going to happen. And you can imagine all the thoughts were catastrophic, absolute catastrophic. And then layered with a bit of anxiety and then some shame about what would happen, because then he'd tell everybody how really badly he delivered the message and he'd make a fool of himself, and that would impact his credibility, and he'd get the sack, and he thought he was going to get the sack anyway, yada, yada, yada. What we did, he rambled it out. We took the one or two thoughts that felt the most destructive and we shifted them really slightly. And the real slight shift was just, I don't know, it's going to impact my credibility. Which as a standalone shift doesn't sound that empowering, that much more high vibe. But actually in context of where he was, it shifted him. He still felt low vibe, but he felt better than he did. So what's really important with this is about how do we find relief and feel better rather than feeling positive, because it's impossible to feel positive. So we access how people are feeling first to get underneath what they're thinking about. We can do this on one-to-one, and we've done it at conferences to gather themes of beliefs people are holding in a particular context. You can use this as a check-in, very basic check-in tool, and people do that. That is a way to start to alleviate social pain by asking someone, how you feeling? That is the most powerful question you can ask someone if you mean it. So just bearing in mind time, we've got 5 minutes. That is where I'm going to stop you. Please get in contact if you want more details on this. This is the diagnostic and measurement tool that we use for our SPF culture. So we measure people on their SPS factor. So we get averages of where a department or an organization might be sitting in terms of how people are feeling. So an SPF factor 22, a lot of social pain. SPF factor 12, social pain, not so bad. SPF factor between 9 and 7, amazing. We haven't had one any higher than that yet, which means people are telling the truth. So questions, Jeanette, I think you can come on now. Let's see if this works.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Yay.
Have you got any questions? Because I've not been paying any attention to the...
There are loads of questions,
okay.
And there were lots of people commenting that really resonated. So on their behalf, thank you, Lou, for talking everyone through that. So first of all, looking at culture at the beginning of your presentation, there were a few questions around how do you encourage leaders to role model culture and to really walk the talk?
Okay, this is a really brilliant question, and something that we have been doing more of at Rising Vibe, and it's having impact. We only engage in something as a human if we believe there's a problem. If we believe there's a problem, we want to solve it. We move away from pain towards pleasure. Okay. Most of us, even if we're outcome focused, I'm very outcome focused, but what I do is go, oh my God, this is uncomfortable. What can I do instead? If the leader doesn't appreciate, doesn't know the level of problem and pain that will continue or is in existence unless the problem is solved and this kind of work is engaged in, and it's not their natural thing. So someone like me would always engage in this. There'll be lots of you out there who will naturally engage in this kind of thing. And if you're on this webinar, I would suggest you're some of those people for sure. But someone who doesn't, clearly, I'm saying one of two things, there'll be more than one of two, but doesn't really connect to it and is uncomfortable and afraid of it, doesn't want to go there, very common, or doesn't really believe there's a problem, because they might be all right. So when you think about the problem I talked about in terms of disconnection between the leadership and the wider organization, if they're not talking, if they don't know what's really going on, performance isn't improving or results aren't being achieved, but they don't really know what's going on, they don't know there's a problem, they're not going to invest in this kind of work. So this makes it even more important to agitate the problem, highlight the problem, and don't just highlight it, talk about, and this is the impact of it. A bit like I've done today. You know, I really have done a bit of that. This is social pain. This is how it is on our bodies. This is the impact in business. And I would love to think, I would love to hope that any leader of a function, a team, an organization, doesn't matter what level you're at, by the way, you can manage and support and challenge your culture at any of those levels, would see something like this and go, actually, I want to solve that. Even if you're just purely commercial, it's going to improve business results. So I guess I don't really do a short version response, as you know. It's they have to know the problem and they have to know the impact of that problem to really engage them in it.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. And I think that might slightly answer this second question, is around subcultures. And in large organizations, and actually in any organization, you're going to get potentially the formation of subcultures in different teams and functions. So how would you challenge subcultures that don't align with the overall vision of where you're trying to take the culture?
So my gut response to that, because again, there's so many answers to this one, is, and I don't know if, I don't know if this is where the questions come from, but there's something for me that just says, get your own house in order. The most powerful thing we can do, any of us, and the only thing we can control is us. So it is frustrating when you look around and you see other people not getting involved, not doing things. But if we are living true to it, if we are really committed and focusing on what we can control, whether that, that's us, and therefore influencing, supporting our department, our team, then we have much more credibility when we start getting the results to then challenge the others. Because we can challenge them and say, let me tell you what I see. Let me tell you what we've experienced and what we've done. This isn't working for me, working alongside you or as a stakeholder or. But we need to focus on ourselves first. It's very easy for all of us. I'm brilliant at this, especially at home, to go, well, what are they doing? Why aren't they? It's a bit like the culture rather than I am the culture. So my short answer to that is get your own house in order first. And then that gives you so much more credibility when you challenge others.
Yeah, good stuff. Then we had a lot of interest.
One more. I think we just do one more.
One more. Okay. There's a lot of interest in social pain. So I guess to sum up a few of the questions together was, do you think that we're basically people are more likely to ignore social pain rather than physical pain? And is part of that issue down to the subjectivity of it, and that we might feel responsible for feeling that way?
Yeah, I do think that. So I think physical pain, I mean, it's mad, isn't it? Because social pain is agonizing. I mean, it's agony. When you're really in it, it's agony. But it's easier to ignore than physical pain. We can still function, actually, with social pain. It depends on the level of physical pain. Sometimes with physical pain, if you've got a really bad headache, for example, I can't focus. But I know I've spent a long time in social pain with certain people in my life, and I've been able to function, not really well. And I do believe, absolutely, and again, I'm saying two camps. There will be, it's not quite as black and white as this, but there will be people who will take responsibility for how everybody else feels and feel completely to blame. There'll be other people going, it's nothing to do with me, it's your fault I feel this way. Which is why self-awareness is so important, so important. And I had a conversation this morning with a new client about feedback. This guy I was talking to you about who said his team aren't talking to him. And what we focus on at Rising Vibe is not giving feedback, receiving it. How do we receive it? Because actually, we need to learn to understand why we feel like we do when we hear some news or we hear some language, why we respond like we do, why we're triggered like we are. If we all took responsibility for how we feel, but not in a, I've now got to take responsibility for everybody else, that would be huge. But I think at the minute, and there will be people who do a bit of both, some people take too much responsibility for everything, themselves and everybody else, and some people take no responsibility for themselves and blame everyone else. So it's about raising self-awareness to go, you just got to look after you. And with these people here, what's your part in this? What's your contribution? Would be my answer to that. So thank you for that. We have run out of time. I mean, I could keep talking about this stuff all afternoon, but what we will do, we're going to save all the comments in the chat. We'll pull together a Q&A. Please contact us, drop us an email. All of our contact details are at the bottom here. Email us at hello@risingvibe if you've got a question, hasn't answered, something that we'd like to discuss further, you want to do a Zoom call. Please get in touch with anything culture, with anything social claim, with anything high-low vibe. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for your participation. Like I see, there's loads of comments coming through. I haven't looked at any of them. And have a great weekend. And look forward to hearing from some of you, all of you, to talk more about this stuff. And I'm going to now go into here and save the chat before I forget. Great. Thanks ever so much, guys. And you know where we are if you need anything else from us. See you later. I'm going to try and get out of this. Trying to close this down in a very sort of slick way. Clearly can't, but you know, I feel very socially supported, so I'm all right with that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Oh, hang on, I've got a few more on here. Just check this in my safe. Okay, so yeah, brilliant.